Welcome to Roadmap to Retirement. Tune in for financial tips, investment strategies, and smart money moves to supercharge your retirement savings. Alex Neri, CFP, and guests are here to help you build your roadmap to retirement.
Welcome back to the Roadmap to Retirement podcast. This week we're brought to you by Keuka Lake Coffee Roasters and one of the distributors, Parkleigh. Very excited to have a sponsor for the first ever time. And I'm excited to have Brian and James here to join me on our real estate roundtable. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. I'll probably not do the best job. Brian, your turn first.
I'm Brian Ohmann. I'm from AnnieMac Home Mortgage. We are a national mortgage lender, but we have a branch here in Rochester, New York.
Hey, I'm James Reyes. I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams. I specifically work on the Flight Ground team, working mostly with buyers in this market.
Very good. So the reason we're here is we get a lot of questions from clients that have questions that are relevant to both of you. So a lot of them are first-time home buyers that are curious how to get in the market in the first place. We also have people on the other side of it that are looking to downsize. Their adult children are now out of the house. They don't need as much house as they once did. So their questions are how to downsize appropriately and when to take advantage of certain things. And then Brian, on your side of things, whenever you buy a house, you have some kind of financial need. So when does it make sense to finance? And we're in the appropriate times to start to use a home equity loan or any other instruments that are out there on the financing side.
Sure.
So to kick us off, Brian, let's go to James first. James, let's talk a little bit about that first-time home buyer process and what people need to know as they get into the real estate market.
Yeah, I guess some of the things that first-time buyers should know is obviously first you should probably start with assessing your financial situation, right? Most people ask, when should you buy? You should buy when you're prepared to buy. So you should know what kind of money you bring to the table to get started, what the credit score is, and then that way you can hopefully start making inference if you're actually qualified to buy. And then at that point, start meeting with the people such as realtor agents to interview, shop your mortgage, and get to a couple of different lenders to see just cost.
Just call Brian.
I guess those would be some initial steps. And obviously, once you meet with the real estate agent, hopefully they can help guide you to the different areas that are going to suit you best in your home search.
Okay. So specifically on the financial side of it, we know in the financial planning world, we say that you should about 28% of your gross income should go towards your monthly mortgage payment. That's including the payment, the interest, the taxes, all of that kind of escrow payment that you make. What do buyers need to know as they approach the table for the first time as far as how many dollars they actually need to put down? At one point it's 20%. It seems like that's not always the case. So how much can I plan on spending on that first purchase?
Yeah, so you could buy with as little as 3% down at this point. If you're looking at multifamilies, there are 5% down conventional options now. There's always been multifamily options for 3.5% down with FHA loans. FHA loans are a little harder to get accepted at this time, so most people are moving towards being conventional as best they possibly can. And then really speaking to the how much out of pocket you can plan for with your house. When you're buying a first house, it can be a little bit different because the tradition says 28%, but if you start doing some math on what 28% really works out to in areas like ours, it could be a very sizable number. I'm going to work backwards on a $2,000 mortgage, saying 28%, just using 25 for easy numbers, it's $8,000 a month. After taxes, $10,000 before taxes, right? That'd be like telling somebody you can't buy in the suburbs until they make $100,000. So there is something that I think should be considered is when you're at the beginning of your career and you're looking to get your first house, getting into a house that you 100% can afford is the first goal. And then when you're looking at maybe those people that are downsizing and retired, that's when you really should start to apply those hard and fast rules, So when you're retired, you're not going to be getting raises, right? You might get cost of living adjustments at best, but when you're early in your career, oftentimes you're going to be making more money year over year. You should get raises and things like that. So I think it's more okay to spend a larger percent of your income on your first property than it is towards the end.
I think the 28% is obviously a very loose rule.
For sure.
How everybody spends money. You might have a car payment that's $1,000 a month, and that changes how much you can afford to pay.
I think it's good advice. So there's a lot of people that want to say, oh, Dave Ramsey is right, or that method is
correct. Let's not touch that.
Or it's incorrect, or those types of, not necessarily that specific program, but there's people like rules, but I think you also mentioned, you hit on it too, though, that it's a guideline. So I think you really should at first say, okay, what's my primary goal? Because if you have to get out of an apartment and get into a house, then you need to figure out what you can do and still put food on the table or make your savings, and then start to set your basis in the market first and foremost, and then work towards making your best financial decisions possible as you go through it. Because I'm sure you've heard the saying that perfect is the enemy of good. And that it can be one of those situations when you're looking at your first house where you're like, I'm trying to be everything all at once. And if you actually did that, most people would end up waiting far too long.
Yeah, it's hard to time it perfectly and hard to jump into the market at some point. I think that's true on the other side of it too. So when we talk to people that are maybe 30 years older, they've already bought their first house, they raised their family, their kids are out now, so they're starting to have that conversation of when do we downsize. I think in today's market it's hard because they're realistically going to sell a large house and then maybe they're going to a much smaller house that's at a similar price point. It seems like they have a taste for something that's much more fixed up at that point and they're not looking for the fixer-upper. James, in your experience, what are some signs that you're ready to downsize and what does that process look like?
I mean, that's some of the signs would be that the house is just too much to take care of. Obviously, it's age, might be hard to get the stairs and things like that. So it's really just a matter of figuring out at what point you want to not do, I guess, the other things, right? Too much upkeep, or I see more people aging in place longer. And I think a lot of that's probably due to affordability right now, because at the end of the day, downsizing your home might not necessarily mean downsizing your affordability.
Sure. Yeah, I think everybody they had this image in their head 10 years ago, being able to sell their house and like walk away with extra cash and get a smaller house, but it might just not be realistic in today's market.
Yeah.
As the boomers age out, you've got one level living houses just skyrocketing. There's such a large contingent of people that are now looking for ranches, well done Cape Cods, or even just houses that have those first floor masters and things like that. Even if it is a colonial or something else like that. So it's really causing those to accelerate in value even more than just the really nice large houses, right?
So the other option, if you want to age in place and you're looking to stay in your house long term, is rather than downsizing, getting that range that you wanted, maybe you're doing an addition on your house or adding a first floor bedroom, first floor bathroom to make it possible to stay there long term. And then we have a different conversation back to the financing side is, how do I pay for that? Does it make sense to do a home equity loan?
You just don't see a lot of that anymore because the cost of houses have gone. We got to look at it as like a function of why is the cost of houses going up with supply, and it's also just the cost of building a new house, right? So that's also caused additions and things like that to skyrocket in value. So I can't tell you the amount of times that I've started to explore this with customers and they just never end up doing it because they find out what we thought was going to be a $20,000 addition turns out the concrete pad is $20,000
that's half a
before you put the building on it. So I don't see that as often, to be honest. We see a lot of people that are like making things work by maybe turning a half bath into a full bath or like a 3/4 if you think of a small shower. I see more of that. And that's where like HELOCs do work. The one downside of HELOCs though is you don't have fixed payments, right? So there are people right now that have been caught with intro rates around 4 and 5%, and now they're finding out that prime plus their margin puts them at a 10, 11%.
Right.
Great right now, and they're panicking.
So
And
think
about the age of the people that are doing that. Those are people on fixed incomes.
Sure.
So you're in the real danger zone with adjustable interest rates. People that are younger and a little bit more able to roll the punches, it's not as big of a deal when your rate went up 2%, figure it out, right? But if you're on Social Security with a budget, what are you gonna do? Yeah. So most people, I'm a fan of the safer route is sell your house, find somebody like James, sell your larger house and find your downsize or your new place for you to age in. And that way you have a fixed payment, you have fixed costs, you know what you're getting into, and even if it does work out to be slightly more money, it's not I see more value in that. I'm a semi-risk averse person, and I would rather have a little bit higher payment, but have it be a known thing. That's my own personal.
Yeah, makes sense. To add to that, and we'll go back to James in a second, we talked about HELOCs a little bit.
Sure.
When is the appropriate time in your mind to use a HELOC in today's interest rate environment?
HELOCs, you have to calculate out like your worst case scenarios. And HELOCs are really good for things where you use it and you pay it down to zero. You use it, you pay it down to zero. If you're going to use it like a credit card type thing, but without having that super large interest rate that's associated with the credit card, that's a good use for a HELOC. But if you're just going to pull 50 grand and like then make minimum payments, you're going to get yourself in some trouble.
Right.
You know, that's where you should be looking at full refinances. Or there's another thing, I know most of us call them all HELOCs, but there's HELOCs and HELoans. HELoans have like a fixed amount where you would just get like 50 grand at a fixed interest rate for a fixed time period. Those are a little bit safer bet than doing like the HELoan. I think I kind of answered your question, but like HELOCs shouldn't be a permanent. They've always been designed to be a temporary solution.
Quick cash, do it with a payback. James, anything you want to add to that before we get some other questions?
No, the HELoan was actually used the HELoan a couple years ago, so that was a really good product to take care of some things I need to take care of without having to start to payment. As they can draw it over 20 years, the monthly payment on it's very low.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how to find the right realtor to work with. So I think I've talked a lot to in my personal life that they end up working with a realtor, maybe they get a little bit into the process and find that maybe they're just not a good fit personality-wise, or maybe what that realtor is focused on isn't exactly what they're looking for, or God forbid, they just don't know what they're doing. So if I'm interviewing a realtor, I'm getting into the process for the first time, what questions should I as a customer be asking the realtor to figure out if they're a good fit?
So I guess some of the first things, especially in today's market, it's probably more imperative than ever to have someone that has experience. So one of the first things you should probably ask is, what's their productivity, how many sales they get per year, because that should be an indication of how many homes they're probably going into. And from there, ask them what their experience is. Do they own a home themselves, or are you selling something that you actually have gone through the process yourself? Maybe even asking if they have investment properties, because that takes it a little further. And that's really then to understand the inner workings of everything that's going on with home management. And then from there, obviously there's personality, making sure that the person
Availability.
Availability as well, so on. So
Are realtors always available?
Right? But I guess it comes down to, you want to make sure that if you need to see something in evenings or weekends, that your agent can do that in 2 trade. Or in my case, one of these things I work on a team. So if I'm booked for your other clients or like events with my kids and things like that, there's always someone who can step up to the plate and make sure that my clients get serviced.
Okay, that makes sense. So one of the things we also run into in today's real estate environment, obviously it's very competitive. So I've talked to, I don't know how many people that they've made 12, 15, 30 different offers on houses, they're not getting them. So outside of just offering more money, what are some things that people could be doing to try to get competitive with that house and offer things that stand out a little bit to the seller?
You can also just offer them
You could just offer, those of us don't have the luxury that Brian has, offer more money.
more Levi's.
Outside of there's like little things I've always heard, maybe they'll offer to pay for the survey or things like that. And this at the end of the day, you're offering them money, right? If anything, they're paying for the survey might be offering no money out of pocket. If we're trying to stay in confines of having limited money and maybe a capped budget in terms of what we can get qualified for looking for, make sure you have the right loan product. If you are conventional, working with large partners and see what's there's called like a cash guarantee out there. Each bank probably has its own type, which I think is actually very inclusive. It's not should have as many.
It's like
hurdles.
customizable.
Yeah, it doesn't have as many hurdles to get to use it and have yourself either a cash offer. Essentially, a cash guarantee is where the bank allows you to basically be fully underwritten, and the bank will guarantee the purchase of the home. Where the differences between banks go is some of them might have phrasal clauses, things like that.
But a lot of that's going to be like situation dependent.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a very well qualified buyer, then you can have less contingencies, which is more appealing to the seller. Which so that allows you to not have to always be the top. Of course, you're not. No seller is going to pass over 40 grand because one's cash and one's conventional. Well, it could make it 10,000.
Yeah,
Sure.
Relationships too. I mean,
Yep, that's
our
big.
Relationships, I think, are something always telling clients that relationships are huge in real estate. So that's why when writing offers, make sure you're writing offers that you're going to actually follow through on, and not get scared of reaching what's called escalation clauses. As everyone knows, home prices, you see list price, it's likely not what it's going to sell at.
That's specific to our area. There's a lot of areas of the country.
To get to that gap or cover that gap, what we're doing is usually use like escalation clauses, saying, well, we'll start at this number, enter back, maybe we'll go in increments to beat the next offer, and we'll have a max, right? So if you get to your max, so if you get to your max, that you're actually willing to follow through on that, because it comes back down to relationship. If I get known as the guy who's got clients that are always back now, but I'm not managing clients well, people aren't want to do deals to me later.
Okay.
So then make the hurdles for them that much harder.
I think another thing for like people that are putting in tons and tons of offers, and every situation is different, but one thing that I'll see that's often a common thread is like they're shopping looking for last month or last year's prices. And there's no other part of your life where that would be normal. You're never going to go to Wegmans and say, I want to pay 99 cents for this milk like last year. If the price is $1.50, you're paying $1.50, right? You just go, oh, I don't want to pay that, but too bad, I'll buy it.
Yeah, that brings up a different point of, we have a lot of people that are trying to time the market, like you
Yeah,
said
yeah.
before, and I think everyone has this expectation that something's going to change, and if they wait a year, the price is going to come back down, or like it's not going to be competitive.
One thing James and I have talked about a bunch, where it's, I think a good challenge for those people are that say prices are going to come back down. I'll just ask them, well, how and why are they coming back down? It's like people that say the stock market's too high. Okay, then what's the mechanism that's going to bring it back down, right? And most people have never gotten that far. They just they go, prices are too high. And you're like, okay, cool. What's going to fix that? And they're like,
Yeah, it's
Okay.
There's no limited supply. We're not building
Right,
stuff,
right,
so like,
yeah.
realistically,
we're up here in Rochester, New York, right? We have our freeze level is 48 inches. That means you're not digging basements in the winter. So our building season is from April until about November. And then once the ground freezes, they're not digging new holes in the ground.
As I
So,
mentioned, builders are in the business of charity.
yeah, exactly.
So they're not going to help build their demand either.
So that's a lot of things. I'm bullish on the housing market. At least in our area, we have not had a down year in, gosh, it was some obscene number. It was before I graduated high school. It was great, 5 years. It's been
you are getting old. That's fair.
Yeah, it's been a while, but to be using my own example to say why I don't think timing the market or even that there is a downturn on the horizon, when you see 15, 20 offers, James can tell you, he does work with sellers as well. When you see 15 to 20 offers, that means there's 14 to 19 no's that went out there. And those people are still out there in the market. And of course, each time we're removing one, but there's more than one person entering the market. Yeah. There's a realtor in our area that put out a stat on a podcast recently. They were talking about how supply is down 50% from 5 years ago. That's a humongous number. And I know everybody talks about, oh, people live in New York. 50% of people have not. Aren't they in New York, right?
I saw something this morning that it showed inventory in 2016 December, which is usually summer's a very slow one. In 2016, there was 700 listings, and today we're at 700 active listings.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're really down. So speaking to how are prices going to come back down? I don't know. I don't think many people that are waiting have really thought that far.
Yeah.
They're just saying they should.
Keep in mind that's with relatively high interest rates. So I thought before we started the camera,
Oh, great point. When rates come down, it's not like there's going to be less buyers in the market. There's going to be all the people that are going, I'm not buying until the rates come down. Or think about sellers. There's a lot of sellers that are sitting on, we call them the golden handcuffs. They've got a whole pile of equity in their house, but they've got a very low interest rate. So they're going, I'm going to wait to downsize, right? So as more of those people re-enter the market, there's going to be even more demand. And builders it's just not possible. And as you drive around most built up cities, look for the building land, right? So we're here in Monroe County in New York. You've got to get pretty far to the edges of Monroe County before you start finding building lots. You're starting to see them outside of Monroe County and in Wayne County and Ontario. When you go down towards Victor, you start to see in Ontario County, and even to the west. In Brockport was a very overlooked area for a long time, but now we're seeing, and so I know I've used a lot of specifics to our area, but like that same pattern holds true in most built up cities. It's not like you build a city and then skip over a bunch of land and then build
Just gets a little
yeah, so you're moving out farther and farther, but you're also reaching the point where it's like you can only go so far before it's not even the same area.
Sure.
Right? So all this is to say, it's hard to increase supply. Since we have underbuilt for so long in our area and in many other areas, it's going to be years before supply and demand right size, and that's really what you're looking for, to see those prices stabilize or start to go the other direction. It's all just supply and demand. You need more sellers than buyers for prices to start going down.
Makes sense. I think we can change gears a little bit here. So a lot of people we talk to are just looking to buy a house to live in, and that's really what real estate means to them. Some other people, and you guys are both in this camp, have investment properties, you're a landlord. So what should people know before they jump into being a landlord? I think everyone knows that there's an opportunity to make money there, but maybe it's not for everybody. So I'll start with James, and we'll swing it back to Brian for your experience as a landlord and what you think people should look out for.
I think probably the biggest thing someone should be prepared for is your upfront cost. One person in property, especially if there's tenants you're taking over, you don't necessarily know what you're getting into. My first year, I probably lost about $5,000 with a tenant that I had no ability to background check myself. And once I took over, maybe beforehand, he was paying, but I was never told that. So it takes a while. So, and to do those things, I'd say on top of that, on top of getting some upfront money to make sure that you can weather any storms that you might not see going into it, knowing local laws, especially around the city of Rochester. There's a lot more than just buying a property, putting up rent. There's having CLO, there's making sure, I guess CLO is a big thing, right? And that's just making sure that the property is seen by the city as soon as it's happening. And that can mean many different things. And each inspector might be a peg differently than another. If you're not buying a property that has one there, make sure that you have someone working with you who's experienced enough to walk that property to say this is what you're going to do. You know, you should be ready for a CLO inspection. And from there, I think it's just really understanding cash flow management, making sure that you're actually building reserves and things like that, not just using this rental property as your credit card. Basically.
How do you pick out your first one, though? I think that was a big part of this question. Do you just jump in and look for 10 units? Do you look for singles? Like, how do you get started?
I think that one you have to decide you decide what your criteria is going to be, not both in terms of style of rental you want to do, whether it's duplex, single, but also the type of tenant you want to attract. So I actually I would say about a quarter of my business over the years with investors. And I have different types of investors. I have flippers, I have investors that are doing student housing, I have investors that are doing Airbnb, which comes back to knowing laws because there's a lot of crackdown on Airbnbs.
Sure.
And then get that midterm, potentially looking at like nursing, child nurses and stuff like that. So really pick your strategy of the type of tenant you want, and then decide what type of building you want to go to, and then really dive deep into those.
Okay. Makes sense. And I guess we'll flip it back to the finance side of that. What are the different loan options if I want to buy an investment property versus my primary residence?
We talked about it a little bit before when we were trying to iron out what we were going to talk about on this, but you should identify as early as possible if you're looking to get into investing in property. Because if you start with, let's just use a big quad, right? A big 4-unit property. If you're going to move into that and live in it as your first property that you buy, you can do that with as little as 3.5% down, or as little as 5% down if you're going to do conventional owner occupied. But if you're going to do that same thing and say, hey, I'm not going to live in it, the powers that be, aka Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all the different aggregators and different portfolio products that exist out there, one thing that's in common is they all view those loans as riskier. So they have higher interest rates, they have larger down payments. So if you're doing it after the fact, then you should expect to be putting larger amounts of money down. If you were to buy a multifamily with a traditional loan, you should expect to put 25% down, which could be a sizable amount of money on a nice, sought-after property. But versus doing that up front, you have a lower interest rate because it's a primary residence. Those always have lower interest rates. and you'll have a lower down payment. So oftentimes you can get similar payments for 5-10% down on primary residence as you would on 25% down investment properties, just because the rates are different.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's something that you should be considering, is set your goals early on what you want to get into and make sure that you're working towards those. We've talked about, if you start in a single family, now you've got to start saving to buy an investment property at 25% down. That's a sizable amount of money to come up with when you're already paying that first mortgage. Versus flip it on its head. If you buy a multifamily first, you have some offsetting income that's going to help you save, like you're living in mom's basement. Yeah. So that allows you to go from multi to single easier than it is to go from single to multi.
Yeah.
And it's a good connecting point. So what Brian's saying is, like, you buy a multifamily house that you actually live in as a owner occupant. And the term for that is called house hacking. For first-time home buyers, who are really discouraged by the market, especially since they're likely to be under 35, making the first purchase, potentially don't have kids yet. Great time to do this.
There's a way to get yourself within that 28% of your income relatively easily, is starting with a multifamily where somebody's paying half the other side.
That's what paying mortgages.
Or all of it.
Or all of
My
it.
first house was a fourplex. And
Yeah, they pay you.
I was able to live in the biggest unit, and all the other rents not only covered my mortgage, but really covered all my operating expenses as well. Why not live to it?
Yeah, that's a dream.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
It's not a dream. You can do it, man.
I could do it.
But you too.
I just got to find a realtor and a mortgage guy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We are getting to the end of our time here, so before we cut off, any last minute things that we missed or anything else that either of you want to add?
Hey man, you're always paying a mortgage. It's just whether it's yours or not. So
Love that.
stop renting, buy houses, get into the market, and set your bases.
Get them the market.
I do think that the biggest thing really is getting in. Most people say, I'm going to wait for rates, and I really don't think people are saying they're waiting for rates. I really think it's really just an important picture as a whole. But it's really sitting down, talking to someone who's knowledgeable, sharing what the numbers actually look like, so you can make an informed decision. Because the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to get. But the earlier you jump in, the quicker you can begin to leverage your current purchase for future purchases, whether it's to upgrade or to investing.
True. All good points. Thank you both for being here. Thank you again to Keuka Lake Coffee Roasters and Parkleigh for sponsoring us. This has been Roadmap to Retirement. Thanks for joining us.
Disclosure. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice. Nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Alexander Neri. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Alexander Neri or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Alexander Neri and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.